Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So after finishing up my updates on recent draft series, I kind of wanted to do one more draft-related video, and I wanted to look at every single draft of the 2010s and give out what I think are the best and the worst pick of every single draft in terms of the draft position. Obviously, at different overalls, you're expecting different things. At first overall, you're expecting the franchise superstar. At third overall, you're expecting a high player. At the back half of the first round, you're expecting a middle six player. And in the later rounds, if you get anything, you're extremely lucky. So we're going to go through every single draft. I'm going to give you the best and the worst selection at every pick. No goalies in this because a lot of the top goalies are selected in like the third, fourth, or fifth round. For example, Sorokin, Shesterkin, Saros, Hellebuck, all later round picks. Yes, you do have some Vasilevskis and some Ottingers, but no goalies because goalies are usually found late. And also, I'm not basing this solely off their careers with the team that selected them. If you know what I'm talking about, there's a couple players, there's going to be a player on this that didn't even play a single game with the team that selected him. This is just going to be based on where they were selected and what players have they turned into. Did their scouting department cook in terms of selecting these guys? So let's get into it. First for 2019, I'm going to go with Matthew Boldy for the best right now. I think this time a year ago, definitely 2 years ago, I probably would go with Matthias Michelli at 98th overall, considering he had such a good rookie year. But after not taking that next step last year, still was very good. Still had like 59 points. This year, though, only around half a point per game, playing less. So I'm going to go with Matt Boldy. Also, Cole Caulfield at 15th and Connor McMichael now that he's breaking out at 25th. But I think Matthew Boldy maybe isn't that franchise superstar. Obviously, it's going to be Kirill Kaprizov. But at 12th overall, outside of the top 10, to get a guy that has legitimately been like around 30 and 35 pace the last 2 years between the ages of like 21 to 23, and this year is really breaking out to maybe be sniffing 45 and 45, and I think this guy in his peak can potentially hit 50 and 50, and also considering he's been one of the best defensive wingers in the entire NHL, I think in a pretty weak draft, as we went over a couple days ago in 2019, to get a player of Matthew Boldy's caliber at 12th overall, that's the best pick, in my opinion, from 2019. In terms of the worst, I went back and forth on this because there's a decent amount. There's 4 guys within that top 11 that you could go with. You could definitely go with Victor Soderstrom. Barely played at the NHL level, 11th overall, but that's outside of the top 10. Podkolzin, 10th overall, still back half of the lottery. He's still in the NHL. You could go with Alex Turcotte at 5th overall, who has not really found his footing. But I'm actually going to go with Capo Caco. I know that might be crazy considering he's already played 350 games in the NHL, I believe, but he just hasn't taken a step. And at 2nd overall, you maybe don't expect a superstar like at 1st overall, but you expect a legit key core franchise piece. And at this point, I think it's safe to say that Capo Caco is not that. He is obviously having an okay year right now. He's on pace for like 40 points, but he's honestly the weakest player on that line for the New York Rangers. So I think relative to draft position, because I think Alex Turcotte, although obviously, Capo Caco's career is far better than Alex Turcotte's right now, I think Turcotte can probably be a 30 to 40 point player going forward for the LA Kings, which is basically what Capo Caco is right now. So I think that the gap between their careers are going to shrink over time. And as a result, 2nd versus 5th overall, that's a pretty big gap. And yes, although those other 2 guys at 10th and 11th busted, I'm going to go with Capo Caco for the worst, most disappointing pick as of right now, considering it is 2nd overall. In 2018, it's a pretty clear choice right now. It's Quinn Hughes at 7th overall. Franchise, superstar, legit Hall of Fame, potential top 75 greatest player of all time, and Quinn Hughes, based on the trajectory that he had, walked into the NHL, was great right off the bat, basically point per game, won the Norris last year, might win the Norris again this season. Still a lottery pick, still a first half of the lottery pick, but when looking at Quinn Hughes, he has definitely far exceeded expectations at 7th overall, especially when you look at the guys at 5th overall, Barrett Hayden, 6th overall, Philip Zadina. There's other picks like Sharon Govich at 141st overall. Absolute steal, but I do think last year was a little bit of not fool's gold, but that probably is the best season of his career, and he was like 30 and 30. He was great, but I don't know how sustainable that is, and it hasn't been sustainable to start this season, as well as Sean Durzi at 52nd overall to get a good top pair offensive defenseman. It's great value at 52nd, but they pale in comparison to Quinn Hughes, even though that was 7th overall. My worst pick, I almost went with Vitaly Kravtsov at 9th overall, but I ended up going with Zadina at 6th overall, considering he was a couple spots up. Yes, Kravtsov played less games in the NHL, but Zadina really just wasn't effective in the games that he ended up playing. Actually, in his 2nd season, it looked like you maybe had something before the COVID shutdown. He had 15 points in 28 games, not a big sample size. But then after that, the next 3 seasons, only put up around 29-point pace. Then went to San Jose, where they gave him a decent shot because they had like no expectations. They said, if you're anything, you're still 23, 24 years old, just run with it. He didn't do shit in San Jose, and now he's already playing in Europe. So as a result, the worst pick in 2018, I am going with Philip Zadina. 2017, Cale Makar at 4th overall. Obviously, a generational offensive defenseman talent. Might put up 100 points this season based on the start that he's had. Won the Norris in 2022. Won the Conn Smythe in 2022. That's one of the greatest defenseman seasons ever, point blank. He's also been a finalist like 2 or 3 other times at this point. He's amazing. 4th overall. Some other honorable mentions. Suzuki at 13th, great value. Jason Robertson at 39th. After that 2023 season, he probably would be the pick for the best pick in this draft, but he has kind of been on the downhill. I've talked about it before. And also Drake Batherson at 121st. To get a great top 6 forward like Drake Batherson in the 4th round is amazing value. But I think you still got to go with Cale Makar to get potentially a top 5 defenseman of all time at 4th overall. Still is 4th overall, but still far exceeds what you expect from that 4th overall selection. In terms of the worst, you could go with Elias Anderson at 7th overall, but I did go with Nolan Patrick just because, unfortunately, his career did stall out due to injuries. Only played around 200 games in his career, only put up around 70 points. Yes, the injuries absolutely stink. If you're factoring that in, it's definitely Elias Anderson for the New York Rangers. He only had 17 points in 110 games, but New York was able to trade him for a second-round pick that became Will Cooley. That was great asset management. But yeah, Nolan Patrick for the worst pick in 2017. Next up for 2016 best, it's going to be Adam Fox at 66th overall. I'm doing this just based on the player at the draft selection. I know some of these careers didn't pan out. We're just looking at the player, not how much value they provided the team that drafted them. How good was the player that was selected? Because clearly Adam Fox never played for the Calgary Flames. He ended up getting traded in the Dougie Hamilton deal and then eventually traded over to the New York Rangers for like 2 second-round picks. But yeah, Adam Fox, 66th overall. This is a top 5 pick of the entire 2010s. When looking at it, he is a superstar franchise defenseman. He has been since he won the Norris at 22 years old back in the 2021 season. Amazing player, future Hall of Famer, early 3rd round pick to get this kind of talent is absolutely insane. Jesper Bratt, 162nd overall. That's arguably a top 10 pick of the 2010s, but still I think Adam Fox is better because he is that lock to one day be a Hall of Famer most likely. And also Tage Thompson at 25th. Not quite in the same realm as those two, but amazing. A legit number 1 center at 25th overall. Austin Matthews is a great pick at 1st overall, but again, that's still his 1st overall. You got to go with Adam Fox. And in terms of the worst, you could go with Jesse Puljujarvi at 4th overall, but I think the clear pick is obviously Olli Juolevi at 5th overall. Debuted in 2020, barely played 41 games in the NHL, totaling only 13 minutes a night. They didn't even give him an opportunity to really flourish. They're like, this guy's not very good. We're basically cutting ties. Now he's playing over in Finland. Yeah, to get a guy that didn't even play, but played half a season with your team at 5th overall, it's Adam Fox is like a top 5 pick of the 2010s. This is definitely a bottom 5 pick of the 2010s, considering they got literally nothing out of him. In 2015, you could argue it's Connor McDavid. I would hear arguments because he might be the best player of all time. If it wasn't for Kirill Kaprizov, though, at 135th, 135th is just too much to it overtakes Connor McDavid at 1st overall. I know the argument is, again, he might end up being the greatest player of all time. He might be the most talented player of all time, but I still think, and you're going to say, like, how could you be better than the best player of all time? I think getting a franchise superstar, top 10 player in the NHL and Kirill Kaprizov at 135th is more impressive than the 1st overall selection, given these circumstances. Kaprizov's not as good as Connor McDavid, but when looking at it, they got their franchise superstar. He burst onto the scene, won the Calder as a rookie. Won the Calder as a rookie. No shit, he won the Calder as a rookie. But it was like near point per game, one of the best Calder seasons of recent memory. That is 2nd season, 47 goals, 61 assists, 108 points. Amazing. 2023, 2024, he's like only 45 goal, 55 assist pace. And then this season, he's yet again showing that he is a legit heart threat, is my heart pick right now. He's amazing. 135th overall. I give him the nod at this point. Next up for worst, I'm going to go with Zach Senyshyn. When looking at him, he went to the Boston Bruins at 15th overall. I believe I'm pronouncing that name correct. He had 3 points in 16 games total for the Boston Bruins. Also, the other pick here would be Jacob Zabril at 13th. Played a total of 76 games. Only had 16 points. So Boston Bruins fans, cry yourself to sleep tonight. In 2014, you could potentially go with David Pastrnak at 25th overall to give Boston a little bit of optimism. But I think Braden Point at 77th is the pick in terms of this. When looking at Braden Point, he burst onto the scene in the 2019 season. He had 41 goals, 51 assists, 92 points, then won back-to-back cups as the number one center. In the last two seasons, and whatever, how long has the season been this far? Like 18 games. He has put up 49 goal, 44 assist, 93-point pace. He's a legit top 20 player in the NHL and basically has been since 2019. What a steal at 77th overall. In terms of the worst, this one hits home. Michael Dowcall, 5th overall, 21 points in 112 games, was looked at to be that future star winger next to John Tavares. Just could never keep up at the NHL level. It stinks. He's playing over in Germany, having a decent career, but in terms of his NHL career, it was a big dud. You also have Hayden Fleury at 7th overall that never really cut it, as well as Julius Honka to the Dallas Stars at 14th overall was kind of a bust, but I think Michael Dowcall is kind of the clear pick here. In 2013, I got Jake Gensel, 77th overall, Cup champion by 2016, and then basically since his third season, put up 39 goal, 46 assists, 85-point pace for the last, 7 or 8 seasons at this point. He is a legit elite first liner, one of the best snipers of this generation, point blank period. He's been great. You could also go with Mackenzie Weegar at 206th overall. Had a bit of a late start and still is fantastic, but I think I would go Jake Gensel at 77th overall. In terms of the worst, Sam Marin, 11th overall, played 9 games, had 1 point. Fun fact, even though he played 29 games, he appeared in 5 different seasons for Philadelphia. Pretty cool. It's not like he just played like 2 seasons, 14 games, and then 15 games. He appeared in like 1 game for 3 seasons, like 1 game each year for like 3 seasons. So had a 5-year career. It's only 29 games, but it's a 5-year career. That's pretty impressive. In terms of 2012, I got Jacob Slavin, 120th overall. Basically, by year 2 of this guy, he was already one of the best defensemen in the entire NHL, giving you around 30 to 40 points. That's what he's been ever since and has only gotten better and still is a top 10 to 12 defenseman in the NHL at this point. To get that in the 4th round, it's ridiculous. Also, you have Hertl at 17th and Shane Gothenberg at 78th, but I think we can agree they're not as good as Jacob Slavin, especially at 129th or 120th. In terms of the worst, there's a lot to choose from here. You got Yakupov 1st overall, Murray 2nd, Reinhart 4th, but you got to go with Nail Yakupov at 1st overall. Had an impressive rookie season with 31 points in 48 games, but then after that had just 102 points in 305 games. Never found his footing in the NHL, and now is over in Russia. One of the biggest busts, if not the biggest bust in NHL history. Very unfortunate for the Edmonton Oilers, but it led them to where they are today. Next up, in terms of 2011, easy choice, Nikita Kucherov. You also have Johnny Gaudreau at 104th, rest his soul, amazing pick, as well as Andre Palat at 208th. But I think we can agree Nikita Kucherov is the clear pick here, considering since 2019, he's been like a 125-point absolute monster, could retire a top 30 greatest player of all time in NHL history. To get that in the late second, great job, Steve Yzerman. The worst pick for this draft, it's got to be Duncan Siemens at 10th overall, 2 points in 20 games for the Colorado Avalanche. Never really worked out there. In terms of 2010, I'm going to go with Mark Stone. Pretty easy one here as well. 178th. That is nuts. That is absolutely nuts. He was having arguably his best season of his entire career to start this year, 21 points in 13 games. Need him to come back for my fantasy team. But yeah, he has been one of the best two-way wingers of this generation. Basically since 2017, 2018, he's been cooking at around a point per game. Yes, his health is a concern, but this guy has shown up in big ways in the playoffs. For the Vegas Golden Knights, is a Stanley Cup champion, so at 178th, definitely is the best pick in this draft. For the worst, this is our last worst for 2010. If you did this a year ago, it'd be Dylan McIlrath, but he is somehow still playing at the NHL level after basically playing like 40 games in his career, then being out of the NHL for like 5 years. He's now playing for the Washington Capitals. So now it is Brandon Gormley, who played 58 games and only had 5 points for the Arizona Coyotes as well as the Colorado Avalanche. Good on Dylan McIlrath to get out of the worst pick in 2018 range. Gormley went 12th. McIlrath went 10th. Now, the fact that McIlrath's still somehow playing in the NHL, no longer the worst pick in that draft. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? Do you want to see this for 2000s? Do you like this kind of concept? And I'll be seeing you in the next one.